Today, I'm finally gonna watch The Flash. Okay, I've seen The Flash. This is my first reaction. I'm going to try to time it to keep it short. Let's talk first about visuals. I thought that this was a visually inventive film. In terms of the way that it shoots super speed, it is fantastic, right? No other movie has cinematically represented super speed, both in real time and in slow motion, like this film. Muschietti uses all these different shots, like from far away, and then like close-up shots that track Barry, and the way that this is paced to the music as well is just absolutely phenomenal. Really, really outstanding stuff that makes you feel like you're in the action of super speed, and the different ways that it shows you, right, in terms of the perspective that it uses, whether you're in the super speed or whether you're seeing it, is really phenomenal. The colors that it uses, the lightning, the perspective, it's brilliant. In terms of the action, really, really well paced. The action does not stop. It kind of hits you at all the different emotional beats with the action. It feels very grand in scale in terms of like visually, like when you're in the Batcave, it feels grand. It feels like you're back in 1989, but somehow it's even bigger, even better this time. So really fantastic action that I think utilizes the Flash's powers, which in my opinion are some of the most cinematic superpowers. You know, when you think about something like, you know, mind control or telekinesis, like it's not very cinematic. You just have like a guy sitting in a chair going like this. But super speed, it's the definition of cinematically inventive, right? Like visually, to see someone going that fast, to see it in slow motion, to see the lightning, it's brilliant. And I think you could have dealt with that in just a boring way and been like zoom zoom, but he does it in a really visually inventive way. So great action here. The action from Batman as well and from Supergirl as well, it packs a punch. You know, in terms of the way that the sound design is done as well, you feel every action beat. I think at times the CGI and kind of visuals could have been improved, but I'm going to give it a pass for this reason, which is that the only times the CG looks a bit interesting, let's say, is because you're in slow motion or in the Speed Force, and things look warped in that world anyway, and you'll see there's some scenes where the way they represent how the Speed Force works, I think, is incredibly clever. I couldn't have imagined it myself. Obviously, it's something that doesn't exist in the real world, so you've got to think, how would this look physically from the perspective of Barry? They do it very, very well. In terms of plot, the drivers of this plot are very emotional. They are focused on Barry, and they are focused on the character arc that he goes through two characters. Okay, so I'm going to get into character later, but in terms of the plot, I think it does a very clever way, without spoiling it, of giving an origin story to the Flash of sorts, which gives you that joy and elation that you feel of discovering superpowers, but also it talks through all of that clever and quirky logic of what does it mean to be the Flash. Oh, he gets really hungry because of the metabolism. They deal with that brilliantly. Oh, his clothes set on fire. Oh, he goes too fast. He phases through things like brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And they do this to the point where it's really funny. Very reminiscent of the Flash Year One, that kind of Joshua Williamson take on that in the Rebirth era. So taking the Flash and giving him an origin story of sorts to deal with how he deals with the powers and how he kind of comes into being his own hero is very clever, because I think a lot of people think the Flash, yeah, you just run fast. It's so much more than that. And thinking through the logic of the physics and how this would work scientifically is something that Ezra Miller has spoken about for years now, and it's so great to see that they finally put that into action. You know, the care taken in this script to build out that logic is very impressive. In terms of the pacing, this movie does not stop. Anytime you think it's going in one direction, it hits you again, it doubles down, and it does that in a way that I think the average audience member is going to be really surprised and delighted by, and a comic book fan is really going to feel respected in a way. It draws you into that comic book world where anything can happen, and as soon as you know the direction something's going in, it doubles down on the crazy logic of time travel. I love the intertextuality that the film has with other time travel movies, lots of references to things like Back to the Future, but not in a throwaway way, in a really clever way. It kind of builds on the foundations of that. I think there's been time travel movies in the past which have done it in a very cheap way. You know what I'm talking about. Superhero time travel movies. And it's like they throw away time travel, like, yeah, do whatever you want, it just creates a branch universe. This one gets into the core of what are the consequences, what changes, how do things change in the future and the past as well, and how can we explain that some things stay the same but some things change. It does that brilliantly, and what that does is it pushes the characters to the edge, ultimately where the compelling part of the film doesn't come from just a physical villain like a traditional superhero movie. It comes from a more immaterial threat, which is time and time travel itself, and how do you fix the mistakes, and should you, and how do you, and what are all the effects. That's what it does well, is that I think people are tired to an extent of seeing superhero movies where the final fight is just, big bad fight with your fists. This is a thinker. This gives you a different, more immaterial threat that requires choices, it requires emotional decisions, and it requires the audience to actually be thinking through the logic of how is this happening, and it kind of breaks your brain at times. But I think the fact that I was sitting there trying to figure out, what's the logic of the time travel? Like, wait, does that make sense? The fact that I was that invested means that it's done a good job, right? Because the movie could have easily just explained it away and kind of been like, yeah, whatever, that's time travel, whatever. It grabs you in a way where you're trying to think it through. It feels so real. And so I think the movie outdoes itself in having its kind of real complication come from something the characters have to solve that isn't just with their fists, which I was really impressed by. Okay, in terms of character, the performances are outstanding. Ezra Miller is the standout. This is Ezra's film. They were fantastic in this film. Obviously, they play two characters, and just an awesome job. To see these two Barrys interact, I think the way that allows for character arcs and character development is done in a very intelligent and thoughtful way by the writer here. Because what you've got is, you've got the same person, really, right? Barry Allen, a young version, old version, without spoiling it, right? And in a way, they each learn from each other and develop personally and emotionally, and it kind of is very reminiscent from those kind of time travel movies which like to delve into how could your life have turned out differently, and if something changed, how does that affect your personality? Are you going to be funnier, more confident, more selfish, more reserved? How can small things or big things change our lives in a way that we become fundamentally different people, even though that's still the same guy? You know what I mean? So and in a way that pushes both Barrys to have their own arc and their own development, which in my mind goes to the one character because it's just different versions of the same character. So I think The Flash is really going to become a standout hero, a fan favorite, finally. He's always been a fan favorite in the comics, but I think he's really going to become a fan favorite here because of the performances and the character development. Keaton's very good. He brings back that 89 vibe. I think they could have utilized him maybe a little bit more. It was fairly kind of reserved the way they utilize him, but he has some good moments. I think there were some interesting choices with how they introduced him, but it was good. Sasha's fantastic as Supergirl. Really, really compelling. I want to see more. The sound. The score is magnificent. It is epic. It's brilliant. It pulls you in at every moment. And then the soundtrack is also fantastic. One of my favorite alternative songs is in here, and it's just this joyous scene. It's like an alt pop song, which is just so much fun. And then there's some great kind of alt rock, hard rock that's set to super speed scenes, which is just, a lot of times it feels superficial, like you're just dropping a track to make it cool. Like, this works so well. I really felt the whole theater was electrified. Okay, and just lastly, in terms of DC Comics and DC fans, I think it's very respectful to the history of DC. It definitely has some cool Easter eggs without spoiling anything. I should flag as well, I saw a version of the film which isn't really the final film. We didn't get credits, we just got a title card that said directed by Andy Muschietti, and then we got some scenes that you can kind of tell are going to be different in the final version. So some things were cut out. Very, very brief things. And by that I mean one thing. And then no post-credit scenes, though I'm told that there are post-credit scenes in the real version of the movie. But in terms of DC fans, I think what this gets right is it brings the Flash to the center of the DC universe, rightfully where he belongs. The Flash is what connects all the different realities and always has in the comic books, right? From Crisis on Infinite Earths with Barry Allen, all the way to things like DC Rebirth and New 52 as well. the Flash has been the connective tissue between all of the different DC multiverses, and that hasn't happened yet in the films, and finally it has. The Flash is finally in his rightful place as the center of the DCU. I think that, yeah, in kind of a sentence, this movie is visually inventive with the way that it represents super speed. This movie is emotionally driven in terms of its character development and how the characters interact to develop each other. And finally, this movie is really epic in its action, and the fact that it also chooses to balance that with quite an inventive and clever time travel plot, which pits its characters against something that's much harder to defeat than just a fight. So, outstanding film. I was really happy. There are some things I would have improved, as always, but really starts out very strong, feels like a comic book, always moving really quickly, and the standout, of course, is the Flash himself, which is the best. So I will give a more of a spoiler review much later on, really, because I just don't want spoilers to be out there because it's quite early to be seeing the film. But they're my thoughts right now. You can't, I don't know, if you've seen it, let me know down below, spoiler free. But if you're excited to see it, also let me know down below. And we're going to be talking way more about the movie in future videos. So remember to subscribe for more comics and movies videos. And follow me on Twitter too. Bye.